Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
And I'm Dr. Mark Davini.
Today's episode, is it everything you claim it to be?
I love it. So to be more specific, we are going to talk about the CMS 1500 claim form.
Now, before you think this is going to be boring, dry, and mundane, it absolutely will be. No, I'm just kidding. It's going to be fun. We're going to talk about just some of the risk management areas that we see in a claim form, a little education on claim forms, and just a little more in depth about claim forms because you probably don't give it a lot of thought. It's just this red form that gets spit out by your software, and you have to spend a lot on postage, or I'll keep saying the electronic equivalent because there is an electronic version of the CMS 1500 that goes out through your clearinghouses.
You know, it's interesting. We've done classes on properly filling out this form. And at times you would spend a little bit more energy talking about the back of the form and the legalities involved in this claim form. And I found that very intriguing personally, because again, it's something you just spit out. It's written in red. It's written in print that I can no longer read. And generally speaking, it's really some type of attestation / contract that you're making whenever you fill one of these out. So we thought it'd make a great podcast because of the general lack of knowledge about what is actually on the back of this claim form, let alone what's on the front of this claim form. So, Paul, why don't we just kick it off with you telling us a little bit about this CMS 1500 claim form?
Believe it or not, before even talking about anything that you would actually fill out, or the boxes we call it, and they're all numbered, let's talk about why it's red. Why is a claim form red? Well,
because everybody gets angry when they have to fill them out,
right,
exactly. Aside from that,
right. Because you have blood, sweat, and tears.
That's it, yeah. So your blood won't show up on the claim form. When you,
But anybody knows anything about OCR or optical character reading knows that red does not get seen by these scanners. So the red actually is just invisible when they run it through the scanners, and it picks up all the text. So it can occupy in their claims processing software on their end. They're being carriers, of course.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had something like that in life?
Invisible to see what.
Just take out all the red and leave behind that which we want.
Yeah, it would be actually. Wait, you spend a lot of time with me sometimes, so maybe I should take offense to that.
Stop wearing red.
Yeah. Just me as a person, though. Maybe I'm a little offended right now.
I'm sorry, I don't see you. You're in red.
Yeah, exactly. Is Paul here right now?
Paul.
So one of the questions that I don't get asked a lot, but I always wonder why I don't get asked, maybe they can answer it themselves, is what is this QR code that's on the top left corner that ended up showing up on the claim form on the newer version, which is not new now, but that quick reference or QR code that you take your cell phone camera and put it on there, and why is it there? Where does it take you? So why it's there is a little bit of a mystery, but it's really, in my opinion, it's because the producer, the generators, the custodians of a claim form is the National Uniform Claim Committee. And that QR code simply takes you to NUCC.org. Now, as a doctor or as a claim specialist, a biller, a CA, why do you give a toss about that? And the answer to that...
You just read my mind.
Yeah. Who cares, right? Who really cares? And honestly, that's been my opinion all along. Who cares?
I know. Right. I never claimed to know anything about it, but I also don't care. No.
Oh, boy. There's going to be a drinking game about how many times we say the word claim.
Right. Yeah.
So the reason why you may care, if you're a nerd like me in the world of billing and claims, is that the National Uniform Claim Committee provides, typically on an annual basis, their reference instruction manual for filling out the 1500 claim form. And they do update it every year, and there's always nuances. What's interesting to me as a dork, I'll call myself that, is that when you look at the instruction manual, I have one right here.
Oh, it's only about 4 inches thick. That's not bad.
But look at the cover. It says 1500 health insurance claim form. Now, remember the old term HICFA?
HICFA.
They abandoned HICFA because they started calling it the CMS, or Committee for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
They used to call it the Universal Claim Form too, and there were like 5 versions of that.
Yeah,
so
universally 5 versions.
Yeah, universally 5
like an ABN.
versions.
There's one but 3.
Yeah.
So I just thought that as a nerd, like, why don't they call it the 1500 CMS claim form reference instruction manual? I don't know. I think there's a conspiracy theory there. I'm going to dig into that, right? Someday. Anyway, this really thick manual that really reads like a technical manual. It's kind of boring if you don't read and, translate claim. You wouldn't care. But what's interesting about it is that when we get questions about what belongs in a box, this is the reference guide you would start with. Yeah, you can take it if you want. I got digital versions. So obviously carriers can override that with their own specifics for in-network, but it is a literal box by box for in general specialty too. So, wow, we already dug in and we just talked about the QR code. We're not even into the text yet.
We didn't even get into words.
Yeah. But before we talk about the claim form and some of the highlights of some of the fields or boxes, we're going to have you, not if you're driving, flip over to the backside of the claim form, because this really, from a risk management standpoint, is really where the rubber meets the road that you might not even realize, because we're spitting these claims out of our software or the electronic equivalent every day. Thousands of these things, hundreds of thousands of these get spit out. Now, the 1500 claim form is the professional claim form. The UB40 is the hospital version. We're not hospital here in chiropractic, so it's the professional claims that we would be using this for.
So like offices and private practices and things like that.
Yeah, non-institutional.
Right.
So right off the bat, so there's the second line down. It says notice. Now, Mark, could you read that? No, I know you can't. It's too small. That's okay. I can read it. I got it.
So, and I'm actually just getting back to the point where he said there's words on the back of this thing.
And they're red. It doesn't help either. But literally, it says any person who knowingly files a statement of claim containing any misrepresentation or any false, incomplete, or misleading information may be guilty of a criminal act punishable under law and may be subject to civil penalties.
Criminal.
Yeah. Whoops. Whoa. What they're saying is when you're filling out the front side of this claim form and all the data fields that you occupy, you better be telling the truth.
Yeah, but Paul, I send it and they pay me. Doesn't that mean that it's correct?
Yeah. I love that excuse. There's not a problem. I get paid. Well, we, for the most part, live in a prospective payment system. Not every carrier is like that. Not every policy is like that. So please, with the mail and the email, I know not every carrier is prospectively paying you. You have to get pre-authorization referrals sometimes, but not all the time. But in the prospective system, they rely only on what you're reporting on that claim form as the gospel truth. And obviously, your documentation and the truth must back you up. But how will they know unless they ask?
Right. So there's no problem with just putting down something I know that's incorrect, but since they pay it, what's the problem?
Fraud is the problem. Let's be really honest about it.
There's that F word again, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're asking, I'm answering.
Oh, damn, there's always that F word showing up.
And in case you thought that they, they're kind of like, they're telling me that right off the bat on the back of the claim form. I know it's the second paragraph or second line, but do they really mean that? Well, if you continue down the backside of the claim form, you'll get words like, in submitting this claim for payment from federal funds, I certify the information on this form is true, accurate, and complete. This claim, whether submitted by me or on my behalf by any designated billing company, that means you better know what your billing company is putting on there.
Well, no, wait a minute. I just give it to them. I don't know what they do.
not an excuse. And as a billing company, I can say that our claims processing agreements with our providers, we have indemnity in there because we rely exclusively on what is provided by that office.
You're starting to sound like my accountant now.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Right. You can. What do they say? You can write off everything until you can't. Right.
Yeah. So, for example, if I were to put 97012 on the front, and that represents intersegmental traction, and they pay it, there's nothing wrong with that?
Well, when we're talking about coding, which you should know, yes, there's a lot wrong with that because even though 97012 means traction, mechanical, intersegmental traction is not included in that definition according to AMA CPT. So, stuff you should know.
Is that F word again, right?
Yeah. From erroneous to fraud.
And the speed of light.
Right.
Literally.
Right. And so I caption at least 4 or 5 places on the back of this 1500 claim form in which they're basically telling you it better be truthful. And if you falsify anything, you may be subject to criminal and or civil penalties. Scary stuff. Who knew?
And, here's something. It's written, I'll say in black and white, but it isn't. Written in red and white, everything you just said. And we know, because of previous broadcasts that we've put out there, that the standard of what you're responsible for is what you should know, what you know or should have known. So if it's on the back of the piece of paper that I keep sending out to insurance companies, I think it clearly falls in the category of stuff that I know or should have known.
For sure. So now let's tie in the back side with the front side. And I'm going to jump right down.
Just keep going.
To box 31. Now, box 31 is where the doctor's signature or printed name and date or electronic signature would go. And it says signature of physician or supplier, including degrees or credentials. So you should have your DC at the end of that. I certify that the statements on the reverse apply to this bill and are made a part thereof.
Starting to sound a lot like a contract to me.
It's simply you are signing electronically, whether you know it or not, or it's printed, your name's printed when it spits out of your printer. You're saying that everything on the back side, I've agreed to, it's a part of what's on the front side, and it's all truth.
So I can't claim I didn't know.
It doesn't work in regulatory. It doesn't work on a claim form. That's not a defense. I am sorry.
Ignorance is not bliss.
No, it's not. But now that we've got your attention, I hope.
You do.
Let's talk a little bit about it. Let's take a little bit of a deep dive in so you can feel confident about what's going out on your claim form. So, it's funny. I'm going to digress for a second because what I didn't talk about with the National Uniform, what did I call them?
The NUCC.
See, my brain
National Uniform Claim Committee.
Claim Committee, yeah.
Yes.
You think I'd have that at the top? That should just roll off the tongue, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, because it's what I read all the time. Yeah, it's my light reading.
But what you may or may not know is that they also are the custodians of taxonomies. Now, taxonomies are code sets that basically define what specialty you are. So chiropractic has a taxonomy. It's 111N00000X.
Again, you're starting to sound like my accountant.
Yeah. That's the taxonomy that represents the word chiropractic in the taxonomy. So basically, that's just a breakdown of, okay, you have a national provider identifier. That's great. That means that you're identifying yourself as a practitioner of some kind nationally. But what kind of NPI number is this attached to? The taxonomy now says it's chiropractic, right? And there's subsets of that, but that chiropractic taxonomy is what I recommend you have and use because it's the general one. So why do I say this? Why do I bother talking to you about this?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, right. Because even though we're talking about the claim form, the stuff on the claim form has to relate back to other things. Your national provider identifier is on that claim form, at least in one area, if not two. We'll talk about it. But what does your NPI database say about you? And here's where we've gotten dilemmas with some of our providers. Their dilemmas, not ours, but they identify themselves incorrectly on their NPI database. So they go to the NPI registry. I look up their NPI number. It's open public information. And they're misidentifying, or it's old. It's antiquated information. The address in the NPI registry is wrong. The phone number is wrong. The taxonomy is wrong. The license number is wrong. There's just wrong. Well, Medicare relies heavily when they do their revalidations on that NPI database, and so does other carriers. You should make sure, if it's been a while, just Google NPI registry. You'll get to the NPPES, and you can search your own NPI to see what does it say about you, and then you can go in and fix it if it's needing some care.
So they would know that if I billed for an appendectomy, it wouldn't be something they pay a chiropractor?
Yeah. What's even worse, though, is you put down that you're a surgeon on your NPI taxonomy specialty. You try to credential as one, and then they're asking you about where you went to school, and you said, I went to Palmer, and they're saying, I didn't realize they started teaching surgeons at Palmer.
And again, we're back to the F word.
Yeah, exactly. So when we look at the claim form, know that it represents a lot more than just that piece of paper. It is the story of you and your patient all on one form. So let's just dive into it a little bit. I like to break up the CMS 1500 into thirds. Now you're saying to yourself, well, you keep saying CMS 1500. What does 1500 mean? It's just the form number. The NUCC came up with 1500. That's the form number. CMS is the Committee for Medicare and Medicaid Services that oversees all this wonderful stuff. And then the 0212, if you even dive a little deeper, is just the version. That's February 2012 is the version, the most recent 1500 version, which interestingly enough took 2 years to adopt. The version was out, but it took 2 years for them to authorize it for use.
I thought the 1500 meant how many times they had to read the NUCC to understand it.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the first third of the claim form, which is boxes 1 through 13, that's really about the patient and the coverage. It has patient demographics, the insured's demographics. Box 10 I would highlight because box 10 is what is this condition related to? And in box 10, you've got 3 choices. You've got employment, which means workers' comp, auto accident, obvious, yes or no on that one, or other accident, which is slip and fall. If you ever, are crazy enough to take assignment on a slip and fall. So box 10 is important because we've all had these patients, tell me if I'm wrong, doctor, who come in and say, I was in an accident, but I don't want to use my insurance, my auto insurance.
I literally just wrote that question down, waiting for my opportunity.
Yeah, there it is. Right? So clinically speaking, if someone says, well, I was in an accident, but I don't want to use my insurance, is there any clinical decisions you have to make about that?
No. Treatment's the treatment.
Right.
Exams are exams.
Right.
History's history.
So treat away.
Treat away.
But when they say, I don't want you to file it with my auto insurance because I don't want my premiums to go up, if you're in a state that happens, usually premiums increases are based off fault. So whether they use their insurance or not, typically they're going to pay more anyway. That all aside, if you decide to agree with that patient and not file through the auto and you bill health insurance, and in box 10, when it says, is this patient's condition related to auto accident, and you say no, even though clinically it is, what's that?
We keep circling back, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Oh my God, there's an awful lot of F traps here.
There is. There's a lot. So when I always say, don't argue with the patient. If they're really wanting you to file with health insurance, check off box 10 as yes, it was. Because guess what the carrier is going to do? Pen the claim, further investigation. They're going to mail something up to the patient who's going to come screaming into your office going, how did my carrier know it was auto? Because I don't commit fraud in my office. So you insisted I billed your health insurance? I did. I wasn't going to say no and risk my license and my livelihood because you didn't want to use your insurance. Right?
Love it.
So most of the time when you tell them right up front, I'm not going to commit fraud, they either leave or they succumb to your compliance and will. So
yeah, and just remember, it's your license on the line. They didn't do anything wrong, technically.
yeah, what they asked was wrong, but
what they asked was wrong.
whether you complied or not.
Yeah, there's no criminal act by asking. The criminal act would be you sending the claim out incorrectly.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump to box 12 and 13. Box 12, I think, is funny because box 12 says patient or authorized person's signature. I authorize the release of any medical or other information necessary to process this claim. I also request payment of government benefits either to myself or to the party who accepts assignment below. Now, would you say that box 12 is a HIPAA formatted medical authorization to release records? Because I wouldn't.
It doesn't matter. It's the government, right? They put out the rules, but they don't necessarily follow the rules.
Right. Now, to me, it's antiquated language. Box 12 is not properly formatted HIPAA medical release authorization.
It's a good thing the optical scanner takes it away, right?
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that under HIPAA with treatment payment and operations, you don't even need this. If the patient's coming in with the health insurance, you accept that health insurance claim, treatment or payment would allow you to release them anyway. So it's kind of weird, but it exists. So the question I have is, anywhere on your intake forms, doctor, do you have the language of box 12 where the patient's signing off on it? Because in your software, when this gets printed or its electronic equivalent, it's going to print with 3 words: signature on file. Do you have a signature on file, technically?
Again, you're always just making it complicated here. You mean I actually have to have one if I said I had one?
The easy answer is just take box 12 language and stick it on your intake form so that they sign to that effect. It's very easy, very easy. The one that...
Procedure,
I know.
procedure, right?
The one that you should pay attention to is box 13 because that is connected to box 27. And box 13 is the patient or the insured signing that they want the carrier to pay you, the provider, directly and not pay them. Accepting assignment is what we call it. That relates to box 27, where there's a yes or no question. Do you accept assignment on this claim? Yes or no? And so if you're saying no to box 27, then box 13 should be blank. There should not be a signature on file language because you're not accepting assignment. It's real simple. Real simple, right, Doc? Real simple. Easy stuff.
Yeah, like I said, somewhere around the 785th time I read it, I got that.
Yeah. These are the things about a claim form that I find interesting because of the interconnection. But so that top third, boxes 1 through 13, really are about the patient, why, what they're there for relative to any third party employment, auto, other, or the insured. That's kind of where that's at. And then you've got the middle third, which is boxes 14 to 23. Now, there's a ton going on in box 14 to 23. It starts right away with box 14, which is date of current illness, injury, pregnancy, last menstrual period. We're not going to be dealing with LMP or pregnancy typically in a chiropractic office. We're talking about date of illness, date of injury, or date of consultation. When did they first come in for that condition? Box 14 is a clinical data set. It is clinical. Doctors, that means that you technically should be filling that out in your software to populate in box 14. Not having your front desk just put the day they first came in for consultation. That may be the date that goes in there, but it is a clinical data element that ties into box 21, which is diagnosis, because it has to do with the injury and when it occurred, or when did they first consult with you for the conditions you're reporting in box 21. A lot of doctors, they completely ignore this. And what happens is either the software will leave it empty and then the claim has errors, or most software actually puts in the date of service in box 14.
The initial or first visit.
No.
No.
The electronic equivalent will put in the date of service because there's nothing else reported in that claim,
huh?
which is a real problem because now you're saying every single time they come in, it's a new
It's
condition.
a new condition. Yeah. I just had 23 new conditions.
Yeah. Again, prospective payment. They're just going off of what you're reporting on this claim or not reporting on this claim.
Yeah. What you know or should have known.
Yeah. And so I always say it this way, if you're checking off yes in box 10, whether it's workers' comp, auto, or slip and fall, then box 14 should automatically be the date of that accident because that's why they're coming in. Pretty easy, simple stuff. Where it gets a little more complex is when they're coming in and you're taking the history doc and they say, well, it was a beautiful day, so I went out, grabbed a ladder, did some housework, yard work, and, a couple of days later I started hurting, and you're like, well, when did it first happen? I don't know. I don't know the date it first started happening. They don't know. They just know it now hurts, or they're now complaining about it. So the date of consultation would be the best date because they can't figure it out. Your notes will say that they don't know. And so date of consultation is more than appropriate.
They should say you don't know.
Yeah, right. And so one would say then, well, how do they know what that date represents, whether it's accident or consult date? Well, right next to that date in box 14, you'll see QUAL, which is short for qualifier. And you put in a qualifier. The qualifiers are 3 digits. 439 means injury. So you'd put injury. You wouldn't put the word injury, you'd put 439. And you're like, well, I don't do this. My software does it. Yes, your software does. Because if you're checking off anything in box 10, your software is smart enough typically to fill in 439 in box 14 qualifier or 431 for data consultation if you don't have anything checked off. I know this stuff's happened automatically. You have no idea. But remember, what does the back side of this claim form say?
I am fully responsible for everything on the front side.
So you should be fully aware. At least have a clue. And if you haven't seen one of these printed out in your office lately, ask your CA to print them out or your billing company to show you one so that you can understand what's on this. The very underutilized box I want to talk about because it's super important from a clinical standpoint is box 15. I think box 15 is so underutilized that it does end up causing problems, especially when we're looking to appeal or defend or try to get paid for something. So what is box 15? Because it just says other date. What does that really mean? And what box 15 typically means is if somebody comes in on an exacerbation. So let's say, doctor, I'm seeing you. It's January 2nd. I hurt my back, my low back. I come in, you work your magic. I'm good after a month. And I'm one of these guys that says, I'll see you when I see you. I come in 3 months later. I hurt my low back again. Same diagnosis. Onset could or incident could have been different. Technically, you've seen me for that diagnosis before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same condition. You've seen me for that before. So that original date, which was in box 14, January 2nd, now becomes box 15. The first time I ever saw you for that condition. And then when I came back in March for an exacerbation or a relapse, that March date would be in box 14. So it just rotates. So that I'm telling the insurance company, I've seen you for that same problem before, but now box 14 says, although the diagnosis is the same, the onset or injury is different. There's a different date.
It sounds like there's a lot of dynamic changes that have to occur in this claim form. Like you said, it tells a story, but is it an accurate story if you're not paying attention to these things?
Again, we're in a prospective payment system for the most part. So this is the stuff that's going to help. And you want to make sure that the story you're sending on this claim form is the story that actually happened and that is documented in your SOAP notes.
So just because I got paid doesn't mean it's defensible.
Right. And I could, from a analytical standpoint, I could say to you, doctor, what are you hiding? Why did you not tell me that you saw this patient for a low back problem before? Are you trying to hide that fact?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Yeah. Especially when it comes to motor vehicle or workers' comp, because we know there's that eggshell syndrome, right? Where patients, once they hurt an area, it could be an area that they re-exacerbate because it's fragile or tender or whatever. You're the clinician, not me. You explain it. But my point is, don't hide from the fact. It's like when you, we'll get to the coding down in the last third. Before I venture on from the middle third, I want to briefly talk about box 19. Box 19 is sort of your catch-all. It just says additional claim information, and it says designated by NUCC. Box 19 is where you can tell the insurance carrier about something that is generically listed. For instance, I provided photobiomodulation therapy or low-level laser therapy. Now, the code I used was 97039, which really is defined as unlisted modality. That's the definition of 97039, according to AMA CPT, who registers and owns CPT. So how do I tell a prospective payment carrier without the notes being in there? How do I tell them that 97039 is low-level laser therapy? I just put it in box 19. Literally, I put in 97039 low-level laser therapy.
So now they don't have to ask for my SOAP note to find out what service was provided that I billed out as 97039.
They want to know. They've got it. There
Perfect.
it is.
Perfect.
Because even if I send in the SOAP note with it, like if it's a motor vehicle or workers' comp, and I'm putting the note behind it, they don't know. They're not clinicians that are reading this stuff. One, they're computers. Two, if it is a person, they're going, unlisted modality, it's saying that I need documentation. Let me send this out. Even though they're staring at the documentation, they just don't know where to find it. Because most SOAP notes won't say in the plan section 97039 low-level laser therapy. They might say photobiomodulation therapy was applied to this area for this amount of time. But nobody can translate that on the non-clinician claim review side what that means. So it's super helpful for me as a biller to have that in box 19. And then, of course, box 21 is our ICD-10 code, the diagnoses, what's wrong with them. And I'll just point out in box 21, you'll see that there are letters A through L. So you get 12 different diagnoses you can report on this one claim form. And believe it or not, the electronic equivalent, you can actually report more than that.
And you should try and report as many as apply to the patient in order to validate your care over and above a simple subluxation.
The question we often get is, well, what diagnoses goes first? And the answer is that depends on who you're billing.
Always depends.
Right? So in CMS 1500 world of claims, the most acute diagnoses would be listed first.
Yeah. What's worst is first.
But we know in Medicare and chiropractic that doesn't really work because they want the segmental dysfunction or the M99 code listed first. Most MAC carriers, I think all of them are like that across the country. So it wouldn't work that way. So you really need to know who you're billing, what carrier, and what their policy is on that.
Yeah. That all said, we are chiropractors, so it is what we do.
Yeah. And then cruising along the bottom third. So that's box 24 to 33. Now, we did talk about box 31, where the doctor's name and credential goes and the date, and that they're attesting to basically the honesty of this information being reported and that all the fine print on the backside is part of this entire claim. Box 24 has the dates of service. Basically box 24D is where the service codes go. And then under the modifier section, you'll see there's 4 boxes. You can compound modifiers. Oftentimes you have to. I know chiropractors, when you bill Medicare, if you're billing any service code to Medicare without a modifier at all, you're doing something wrong. You always need a modifier on every code. Now, that modifier may change depending on the code you're reporting, but you always need a modifier, and probably more than one.
And I hope you're kind of getting the gist here that you should be taking this claim and looking at it, because I literally had a doctor ask me the other day, where do the modifiers go on the claim form? And if you actually spent the time to look at the claim form, you would see that there's a column that says modifier. So most of the time, it's like you say, they spit it out, but we don't really look at it. And what we're saying, maybe it's a good time to look at it.
And just the amount of information that's on this one row. So if you look at box 24, row 1, you can report up to 6 services on a paper claim. It tells you the date or dates of service it was rendered. B is place of service. It tells typically it's filled in with the word number 11, which is office. But what if you saw a patient at their house or at a SNF, a skilled nursing facility? You would need to change 24B to where you saw that patient. So if it was at home, it would be a different number than 11. If it was at a skilled nursing facility, it would be a different number. Look at the information I'm getting already. I know when and I know where. And then D is the actual code. I know what services were delivered. But not only do I know what services, if I look at the modifiers, I can actually know more about that service. So if it is an exam with a 25 modifier, I know that a chiropractic adjustment was delivered on the same day, or should be, because that's why you'd use 25. If it's manual therapy techniques, which we've done a podcast on that wonderful code, when I see a modifier there, I will know that if the XS modifier is on manual therapy techniques, I know, well, at least I've been being told, maybe I don't know, but I'm being told it was done on a different anatomical site than what was adjusted. And if I look at 24E, the diagnosis pointers, I will know which area that the manual therapy occurred and which areas it didn't. And I'll know which areas that the chiropractic adjustment occurred and where they didn't. If diagnosis pointing is being used, which it should. Diagnosis pointing is real simple. The diagnosis I'm reporting in box 21, they relate to the services I'm reporting in box 24D. Those simply relate.
Can't get much clearer.
It kind of is clear. It's a pain. You have to stop and do that. But you're helping your claim specialist, because now if I'm trying to defend a manual therapy technique billing, I can say, well, the SOAP note clearly demonstrates it was done on a different anatomical site. Oh, by the way, so does the claim form, because the modifier exists and the diagnosis pointing is correct. So,
and let's face it, we're trying to avoid them requesting your notes because it's a delay of payment. There's always a chance they may interpret the note differently and not pay you. So the more complete this claim form is, it seems like the more likely it'll just go through without a hitch.
It's 2 words, man. Clean claim. We love a clean claim.
Clean claim.
And then I'm just going to highlight the end of box 24, which is J, which is a rendering provider identification number. This is the provider who delivered the service. This is a highly abused field on the claim form, because you think it's okay if I just have my buddy come in for the day. I got to go do something. They're going to cover me, and I'm just going to use my NPI number. Why deal with anything else?
Yeah, I just bill it under my NPI number.
Remember, what you put in 24J, if that's your NPI number and you didn't deliver the service, remember, you're attesting in box 31 to all that scary language we just told you about at the beginning of the podcast.
Well, I'll give you an example that tells you how computers talk to each other. We had one doctor who was brought up on charges by the insurance company because they claimed that the billing went out under his NPI number, but they know he didn't perform the service because he was in surgery. And it just so happened that his insurance company paying for his surgery was also the same insurance company that was paying for him to render adjustments at the same time.
Wow.
And how they talk to each other, no one really knows, but they figured it out. So somewhere in there, one computer talked to the other computer and said, this can't be possible. If he's in there getting cut up and he's over there rendering adjustments at the same time, that's a pretty good feat.
And that's just algorithms. Imagine when AI on steroids here gets fully implemented. What?
Yeah. They won't just talk.
Yeah. I'm emphasizing some of these data elements, not to bore you with the minutia, but to tell you that you're telling a story with the claim form or the electronic equivalent that you're spitting out to these carriers. And is that story accurate?
And if you know it's not accurate, then you're back to fraud.
Right. I mean, I've seen some tricky things where, okay, I'm not going to report my individual or type 1 MPI in box 24J because I know I didn't do it. I'm going to report my type 2 or group NPI in box 24J, even though it was somebody else. So the practice rendered the service. even though it says rendering provider's identification number right on there. So if you're reviewing that and you put 10 claim forms from this provider office side by side, doc, and you're starting to notice that the NPI number in this one doctor office changes, and then you look up the NPI and it's the group NPI and not an individual, what would that tell you as someone who's analyzing that?
Yeah, you're probably hiding something.
Doesn't it demonstrate intent? Because you're
Absolutely.
aware of that field now, because it's not just spitting out your NPI. You've actually changed it to your group NPI.
And just remember, if it's inaccurate and you know it's inaccurate and you do it anyway, we keep circling back.
Yeah, we certainly do.
So recognize this is a contract in a sense, or at least an attestation that what you put on the front is true and accurate. And if you're doing it for money and you know that you're doing it incorrectly and you get paid, you could be in serious trouble.
Do you even know what's on your claim form? It's funny, for our members' moment, I'll say that oftentimes the question I get is simply, what modifier can I use with this carrier to get this code paid?
Right.
That's the question.
What's the code I need to get paid? Good question.
And so my answer usually is, what is the service you're rendering? Who are you billing it to? How long is the service being rendered for? And then I can answer to you how to properly report that service to the carrier.
Oh, we'd commonly walk in and look at a claim form, and they would put on the claim form the attended electrical stim code.
Oh.
And it wasn't attended electrical stim. It was clearly unattended electrical stim. And then I would ask, why did you put this code down? Or you would ask, why did you put this code down in their claim? And their answer is always, well, they don't cover the other one, but they cover this one.
Right.
I said, then why didn't you just put down appendectomy? Because you didn't do either.
Right. Right. Well, it had the word electric stim in the definition somewhere. I don't know.
It sounded close enough. Come on, are they really that picky about this?
Well,
yes.
They certainly can be. And then to round it off, when you're looking at boxes 32 and 33, there is a difference there. Box 32 is the service address that the care was rendered. Mostly it's going to be your office, because that's where you're rendering service. But if you do render services in patients' homes or elsewhere, a skilled nursing facility or something like that, then the address of that location should be in box 32. Now, why? Well, for Medicare, we know why, because there could be different reimbursement depending on the actual geographical area the service was rendered. There could be a different fee schedule. Not all states have different split fee schedules. Smaller states, it doesn't matter. You still need to report the correct address, but the reimbursement wouldn't matter. Bigger states, in Texas alone, I think the Houston area has 5 or 6 regions just in that one area. Never mind the whole state. It's got a ton of them. It's a big state, so the bigger states will have more. Massachusetts only has 2 areas. But again, that's why your box 32 should be correct, so that you're getting accurate reimbursement. And then box 33 is who's getting paid, who's getting paid for that service. When you're looking at the claim form in general, I really do encourage you, docs, to have your staff or your billing company, somebody, print one out, take a look. Let's just see if everything is the way it should be, because your name is on that claim form.
And it's what you know or should have known.
Isn't that the truth? Well, that was a lot. I felt like I said a lot, but I had a lot to say, and I didn't want to go past drive time.
I think it's good for those that commute a little bit of a distance.
Yeah, right.
But it's important stuff for sure.
Yeah, right.
Very important.
If you're whipping out a claim form while you're driving, I'm sorry.
And you won't be able to claim. That's the reason for the MVA that you're checking off in box 10.
Yeah. So. But you know what? Share this podcast with your chiropractic assistants, with your billing people, your financial CA, whoever, so that if I was talking Greek to you, it won't be Greek to them.
He only said that because he's actually Greek.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Well, on that note, I hope that you got something out of it, and that it is everything you claim it to be.
Exactly.
Thanks so once again for listening to All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
And Dr. Mark Davini. Thank you all.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.